good morning, and happy, happy, good morning, and happy Tuesday to you. I hope today has started off so wonderfully, and yet you've been able to spot all of your things that bring you joy and and just comfort this morning. Of course, this morning we celebrate the Norse god tier TV.com, where you'll find a plethora of perspectives and understandings and intellect that may help you along your journey. Now, remember, our spiritual path is that which provides balance to our physical path, thereby helping us with our mental health. So, super important. As always, I want to say huge shout out to all of those platforms that carrying us. And if you haven't hit the like, follow, subscribe button in whatever platform, I encourage you to do so. A wonderful collection of message platforms that can be used for good. So by all means, like, follow, subscribe, hit the the little bell button, and continue to help us move our message forward. As always, I also want to say huge request for those of you who may have some extra coins, please feel free to drop them in the tip jar. Every little bit goes to helping us produce this message around the world, so that hopefully the right people get the message and can help themselves get back to that balance, right? As always, you can find out more information about me, myself, my message, all the shows, and certainly a path to getting together, having a dialogue where I can provide hopefully some coaching to help you obtain or maintain your mental space and become successful, get past those hurdles that may be challenging you today. All right, my friends. Well, today we're celebrating the God tier. Now, the God tier happens to be one of my personal favorites because as I've learned to trance and psychically channel, one of the individuals with whom I've channeled is my great grandfather Tyrion. Now, Tyrion, of course, being born in roughly about 500 BC, he was named after the Norse god Tyr. Now, fast forward from the time of his birth to the time we see all around in history, as the Celtic tribes moved from the Iberian Peninsula up into the areas around central Germania, and certainly in my ancestors' case, more what is today the Netherlands. So that's more northeastern Germania, where they would then migrate up along the water there until reaching the Elbe River. The Elbe River is where they would stay for several generations before crossing the Elbe River into what is today the Jutland of Denmark. Now, half, if you will, of my ancestral tree would go up the Jutland of Denmark to settle in a town named Bjerby. Bjerby, for those of you not familiar with Denmark, is just before you get to the North Shore, or the northernmost points of the Jutland of Denmark. And so Bjerby sits about 6 kilometers from the North Sea, and 6 kilometers to the west would then be the North Sea as well. So they're kind of up in that corner there. So a wonderful, wonderful establishment. Half of my ancestry would then take out across the water from the Iberian Peninsula and would settle in what is today the Waterford, Ireland, where several generations of recorded ancestry would be in a town called Lismore. So Lismore is up in the corner where Waterford is here, and you have Cork over here and Tipperary up above. So those are wonderful places to be a part of, and certainly to be connected to the history of. So with no further ado, Tyr followed the migrating Celts into, and was really, we see him really appear in history books as these folks arrived in central Germania. He would become recognized as the god of justice and law and that which was right. He was a pretty stand up guy. So he would go on to become very much centered around being a spiritual warrior and making sure that the right things were done in the right way. We know that as we see the Elder Futhark take hold as the language of any amount of writing, um, we see the last et of the Elder Futhark. Last et would be the last 8 characters, and those 8 characters would represent letters within the alphabet. Tyr would be first. That would be his Tyr or his et, and Tyr would be represented um, in the rune Tiwaz. Tiwaz, of course, meaning in the steps of Tyr. So really, he really began recognition in this role as being right, being the righteous, being spiritually accurate. Now, as the as that understanding migrated north, we would see Tyr kind of evolve into what is, I would say, probably a more common understanding of him, and that would be the god of courage, as in he would be the one that would be willing to put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir so that Fenrir could be chained with the new chain that the dwarves had built or forged and supposedly unbreakable, and has held Fenrir, I would think, for the most part. I think there's been a couple of times in history he may have gotten out for a little bit. But nonetheless, these chains have held Fenrir since those days till now, and will continue to hold him until Ragnarok, where he will be set free. And of course, Fenrir would be the one that would destroy and kill Odin. Now, all legend and lore of Ragnarok, the final battle of life. Tyr, back to Tyr. Tyr represents courage. Courage to just above and beyond. Now, there are 2 forms of courage that we really need to focus ourselves on. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. The first form of courage is to be ourselves, to be our authentic selves. Now, in a society that has been browbeat for 2,000 plus years about coming together and vanilla everything, sometimes being ourselves can be intimidating at best. Sometimes it can be outright fearful and understandable. And many people many people struggle to reveal their authentic self, particularly if they haven't had experiences as to how to find your authentic self. Who are you at your very core? We've been many people will grow up meeting other people's expectations, and they kind of lose themselves in that quest to meet other people's expectations, whatever those expectations may be. Well, the good news is all you have to do is step 2 of our search for courage. Courage, it to look inside. Look inside who you are. What do you value? And many times this will take us taking a minute of our days to do an inventory What do we care about? What do we want? What are our goals? Well, first, let's look at who we are. What values do we have? Do we value other people's lives? Do we value friendship? Do we value um, the earth and life? As we move through these things and we have intrinsic discussions, a narrative is built of who you are, what your values are. If we value life, if indeed we value life and other lives, then when our friends attempt to convince us, influence us, to maybe do things that are risky to other humans, there becomes a conflict, and now we're going to say, wait a minute, that's not how I roll. I don't like that, so I'm going to go this other direction. So courage to be oneself. It's not as it's certainly not what it was in the past. Let me caveat that by saying, I, like you, a fellow traveler, I grew up in a world where certain things weren't done. We didn't believe in those things, and yes, they could have been my upraising, for sure. And we didn't ask for help, things like that. And it wasn't until I overdosed later, my what would that have been? My early 20s. I would, of course, succumb to an overdose in heroin, where I became completely vulnerable. There was nothing I could do. I had overdosed. I laid in a drain culvert, probably 10, 15 miles outside of the town, Tucson, Arizona. And I have no idea the time that it took from the time I actually took the medicine to the time it took effect to the time I was actually discovered by someone passing by on a motorcycle. Whole another story, of which I am eternally grateful, and I thank him every day. Every day. And I know now that he has gone on to the spiritual realm. However, I'm able to communicate with him and tell him how much, I introduce him to my children, my grandchildren. What a wonderful gift he offered me, free of charge, out of the place of love for his fellow man. So he found me in a drain culvert, overdosed on heroin. He would take me from that place. He would take me to his home, and he would essentially lock me in a room for 2.5 months ish for me to become clean, for me to kick the heroin habit. And I've never looked back. 35 years now it has been since those days. And now I have a different purpose. I have a different reason for being. And quite honestly, I'm actually very proud. But he didn't have to do that. It would have been just as easy for him to continue to ride his motorcycle and not stop. But he didn't. And then to take, now granted, I'm not a small person. I'm of a larger stature, and he put me on the back of his motorcycle, took the belt from his pants and wrapped it around the two of us so that, and bungee corded, by the way, me to him so that he could get me from that place to his trailer. That's a lot of effort to put into someone you have no. He didn't know who I was. It wasn't until as I recall correctly, it was a probably about 2 weeks after he put me in the room that he learned my name, an intrinsic um value of other life, and he was willing to go to the ends of the earth to do that. That's values. Those are what you possess about different things in your life. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. You may value other lives. You may value the trees, our brothers and sisters of the trees. You may value um, the grasses. You may value the mountains. You may value um, other human dogs, cats, animals. All of these things have spirits, have souls, and therefore require care for. So, being an authentic self, if we are of the mind that we want to protect and hold on to our brothers and sisters of the animal kingdom, and someone comes along who's very influential to us and says, "Hey, we're going to go violate these animals," you say, "No, no, I won't allow that. Not only am I not going to do it, but I'm going to stop you from doing it as well." This is the courage to be ourselves, looking at the values within ourselves and controlling our behaviors based on those values. That is courage. And you have that. I have that. Anyone has that. All too often in the modern day world, we're willing to surrender it. We're willing to just, okay, whatever. In our mental quest to be included in a community or a society. But ultimately, we don't have to. When we bring our spiritual or our intrinsic self, our heart, up to balance with our mind. Our mind, unfortunately, can be swayed fairly easily. It is, unfortunately, it takes in a lot of data, a lot of experiences, processes them. It's always on the lookout for a shortcut, right? It's always trying to shortcut. Why? Because it's processing a lot of data. So it's always looking for a way to do that more quickly, efficiently, easily. So in some cases, the brain simply says, all right, let's go, because we want to be associated with those people, let's go do whatever this is. When your heart, if you take a minute and say, wait, no, I can't do that, nor can I allow you to do that, right? Because we've looked intrinsically now and we've aligned our heart to our mind. And they're locked in together. And that is living authentically. That is what living authentically means, is that our brain says do something, but our heart says, wait, do this way. Why? Because this is the way you feel is right. Now, where does that end? Where does my righteousness end when dealing with you? Well, we have to remember that my righteousness is going to be different than yours. My idea of, no, we're going to hug our brothers and sisters in the trees. We're going to hug them and protect them and save them and not allow them to cut. Right? But if you need firewood for your home, and you need to cut down one of our brothers and sisters within the trees. How can we accomplish both? Well, we pray. We pray to the gods, we pray to the spirits of the trees, and we say, we need. And what will be presented to us is maybe a tree that has already fallen of other reasons in the circle of life. This other tree has fallen. Not to mention that wood would already be dried and everything. So we simply cut it into smaller chunks. We take it home. And now you have a fire. We have not disturbed any of the trees, right? Any of the live, living trees that still possess this life force. This is finding the balance, right? Because there will be trees that will be destroyed, whether by maybe a fire, maybe by a lightning strike, maybe by our brothers and sisters in the moose running into it, or a bear running into it. All of these things stays within the cycle. Now, natural wild animals are in this circle. They don't come out of it. Humans are out of it. Humans step out and oversee the circle. But we simply oversee it. We don't manage it. We don't control it. We don't dominate it. We simply oversee it. So, a very different picture than what many would have us believe, if that makes sense. So the key to living our authentic self is to include both our heart and our mind, right? So we got to have both parts, okay? Living courageously means that we follow our heart through our mind, right? Courageous enough to live authentically, courageous enough to look inside of ourselves to see what our real values are and live our lives according to those values. That, my friends, is courage. And that's the courage that the Norse god Tyr exemplifies for us. He didn't have to put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir. There were other gods there that were present that could have done this, because they all knew Fenrir, and they knew Fenrir would bite the hand of whoever decided to do this. They knew this, but they also knew that the chains had to be placed around his neck, which to restrain him from destroying the realms. Okay, so they knew the value, and Tyr, of course, represented the courage to say, I'll do it. Why? Because I know we need to have this chain around Fenrir so that the realms would live, the realms would survive. So I'm willing to put my hand in his mouth. And of course, promptly lost a hand. But he was courageous enough in which to do this. So Tyr really represents the courage, for himself, because remember, what did he believe? What did he represent? He represented justice, equality, the balance. He represented the equality necessary to sustain life. So therefore, by him putting his hand in that wolf's mouth, he established a balance between the value of restraining Fenrir against what the potential loss would be. And it worked out for us. For us to living today, we are living proof that what Tyr did was indeed enough to secure Fenrir, that that the life could exist in the rest of the realm. So very, very important that we embrace this courage for ourselves. The big thing that I want you to know that's super important, because I think it gets lost in translation sometimes, is how important you are. You, the one watching this, and me, and everyone else for that matter. But you, most importantly, are a unique combination of experiences. You have experienced things differently than anyone else who will ever be, or whoever has been. You're very different. You start with a DNA combination, right? Your biological combination of DNA. It starts you at a very different place. Then, as time goes on, your experiences in this lifetime alter that DNA just a little bit along your trajectory, and it continues to modify you through the release of the chemistry for your emotions, through these emotional adjustments made to adjust for our environments. All of these things are changing you just a little bit. And any other type of ingestion, whether your diet, obviously, wherever you live, alters your DNA just a little bit. And we are definitely demonstrated this by all the cultures of the world. Or if the diet didn't adjust us, we would all be the same. We wouldn't have the different cultures and societies that we have in the world today. So we know that all of these things affect you just a little bit, because they're manipulating that base DNA, which then your emotion bounces off to actually process within your mind. So, yes, your food matters. But most importantly, and more importantly, so do your emotions. Your emotional state releases chemistry that can alter the DNA of your body. So, super important. So, today, be yourself. You are so special. You are really, really wonderful. You're a gift to any of us who understand this. So, be yourself. Have the courage to be yourself. Look inside, see what your heart says, and live that. All right? And we will see you again tomorrow, when we will speak about Wooten and his gift to our existence in its entirety. All right? Love and light, my friends. We will see you again tomorrow for Wooten's Day. In the meantime, be sure to check out New Reality TV, as well as all of these platforms. Like, follow, subscribe, and or be sure to hit the tip jar. Love and light, my friends.